right, it's a Sensel live stream. Bum bum bum. It's a Sensel live stream. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. All right. Today it works. All right. Welcome to my humble studio, where today the internet is working successfully. Yes, it is actually working. We're live, and I'm pleased. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Many apologies for yesterday's utter fail. Today, we're good. So let's get on with learning. Today we are going to be embedding ourselves in iOS and the iPad. So what I want to accomplish in today's pretty extensive tutorial live stream is kind of go through what it takes to sort of make music with the Morph and the iPad and take it from lots of different angles. And what I'm going to do is go through just like some of the gear, and I want to take you through a little bit of Garageband just to give you some familiarity with that, because it's ubiquitous and super powerful, and I use it in kind of just as an augmented way to get me to Beatmaker. So the software Beatmaker from Intua, I guess it's Beatmaker version 3, is what we're going to be going through heavily today. So I am going to go through just kind of the general idea of its sampling-based workflow, and sort of pervert it a little bit, kind of take a different tack up with it. Normally it's used for, making beats, doing electronic music, things that tend to have a lot of quantization or whatever, things that are rooted in that MPC style of production where you have samples, you have your 4x4 grid, and you interact with that stuff. But the sampling library is super powerful in Beatmaker. You have layers, you can do multi-sample libraries on your own. Of course, there's packs you can buy and download and integrate. But that's the easy stuff. You don't need me for that. So I'm going to take you sort of through the whole process of starting from scratch and building out a track that normally you might use a different DAW for, but this way we kind of see all of the nooks and crannies of Beatmaker. So what is the gear? I'm going to start with that. So first, today I'm working with an iPad, iPad, I don't know, 2 or 3 or something like that. I'm not even running the latest OS because it's a little bit behind. It's not the most powerful thing on the planet, but I'm actually able to get a lot of good work done with it. Throughout this, there's probably going to be a lot of latency for most of the stuff that I present because, as you can see, I'm connected here to the computer so I can stream out the interface. That looks like that. So it makes it a nicer experience visually, but the audio is going to be a little bit latency. That's not a fault of the iPad or the software or the Morph or Bluetooth or anything like that. It's really just an issue of running everything through the computer, and so we get that latency with the audio. And so that's the iPad. We are also working with, since I used guitar in this track, tweedledee-dee-dee-dee, let me find that equipment over here. I used this, the IK Multimedia iRig HD. I think this is actually an older model of this type of thing, but it allows you basically to plug a guitar in one end and plug it into the iPad on the other end, and just kind of get your levels, and that way you can use all of the cool effects and guitar pedals and stuff like that in GarageBand or whatever. And then, of course, we're going to be using the Sensel Morph as our MIDI controller. I'm going to be demoing it with Bluetooth, so I'm glad I can do that because I'm hooked up through the lightning connector to the computer. And what other gear do I use? Oh yeah, this is also an important piece. The camera connection kit. This comes in a few different flavors, but the idea is that you can plug in USB and lightning on the other end. So this way you can plug in any sort of USB accessory, such as the Morph. If you're not using Bluetooth, this is a really wonderful thing to use because you could just plug in directly. And this particular model has the power pass-through, so you can plug in power and not have to worry about needing a powered hub. Of course, the Morph can be set up, and I'll show you how to do this, can be set up so that you don't need a powered hub at all, even if you just have the model that just has the USB and you're running on battery power. But this is nice. This is also really good for USB audio interfaces. If you're not using something like the iRig or the IK Multimedia stuff or the iConnect MIDI stuff, that's all sort of designed to work with the iPad. But if you're using just sort of something that's a standard USB class compliant audio interface, then you'll need the camera connection kit. So those are kind of the elements of a studio built around the iPad. And so I guess let's just get into sort of the next chapter where I sort of go through. Let's see, let me check my notes here. Let's go ahead and connect to Bluetooth with the Morph, and we'll go through that process because it's a little bit different than other MIDI controllers. Not too different, pretty simple still. And let me move my position. All right, so we have the screen and overhead showing now. Let me situate my iPad and make sure we can see the Morph completely here in our camera view. All right. And let me grab my headphones so I can hear what's going on. Okay, so connecting to Bluetooth for MIDI. That first needs to be done in the system settings, and this is where we kind of do things a little bit differently than other MIDI controllers. So I open up system settings, and we can go to Bluetooth, and you'll already see that my Morph is listed here, the 4693. That's just the last four numbers of the serial number so that you can see on the back. So what I'm going to do is forget that device because I want to start from scratch and show you how this works. Bluetooth is on, and now what I'm going to do is on the Morph, I'm going to click the top button once, hold it down. Okay, the lights flash. And we can scan, so now the iPad is looking for it. We have the little blue LED here on the top. And sometimes it takes a few minutes to show up, so I'm going to toggle the Bluetooth. And there we go, we see it. And now I can select that to pair it. Let me try that again. I will tap on it, and I get the dialog, pair, and now we're paired with Bluetooth. That's super cool. Now, yeah, on iOS and iPad, whenever you're doing anything with Bluetooth, you're going to need to set that up in the app itself. And much like a desktop, you would need to do that. So first, I'll go to Garageband. I already have something loaded here. We go to our settings up in the top right. You'll see that wrench. I'll click on that. Then we need to go down into Advanced and Bluetooth MIDI devices, and oh, we're already connected. So the cool thing is, down here on the bottom left, I can click the plus, and let's say I'll just add a keyboard. I'm going to add a synth, and there we go. So that's cool. But of course, now I can use the Morph to trigger things rather than the on-screen keyboard. So since this is a keyboard instrument, why don't we go ahead and give that a try? So that's the basics of hooking up MIDI via Bluetooth to GarageBand. So we've got that working. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that because I want to, now I don't know if I really need to do this. But I do want to make sure that we don't have any interruption when we go into Beatmaker, which is going to be the primary focus of what we've got. So this is Beatmaker. When you first open it up, it will probably look something like this. Or I'll take that top left hamburger menu or 3-line menu. We can select different sessions, bank, samples, plugins. So it's already named, given a session April 2nd, 2020, sort of a default for this if I wanted to load things. So that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead for demonstration purposes, load up a bank. So I'm going to load one of their standard kits, Summer Drums. So if you're following along at home, you can do that. And I clicked on it and it didn't do anything. I need to press the load bank down here at the bottom left. Loads the preset. Sweet. Now I need to get the Morph connected to Beatmaker. That is another challenge. So let's make sure we have sound here. Great, so I can play with the pads on the screen. That's nifty. I want to connect the Morph. We don't see it in the MIDI, so I'll connect the gears. I connect this little top right Bluetooth icon and connect the Morph. So now the Morph is connected, but in order for this to really work, we kind of need to set some things up. This is where things get a little bit weird because the way the Morph is set up, it's sort of designed to work with the assumptions that most desktop software has, where in these, especially in these 4x4s, so in Ableton Live and in Logic and Cubase and pretty much anything that uses MIDI drums starts at note 36 down here. C, I guess that's C2, C3? No, that's C1, I'm sorry. So yeah, MIDI drums usually start at C1 and make their way up. The Beatmaker 4x4 does not respect that tradition, which is cool from a sort of programming perspective, I guess, but from tradition's perspective, it makes things difficult. So there's a couple ways to get these pads playing your bank. The first and probably the easiest way is to use the MIDI focused actions. So we've got Bluetooth coming in. I'm going to go ahead and just use MIDI learn. So trigger pad 1, just click it, and I go through this little spreadsheet here that they've set up. So for example, I've got those 3 going, and now I can go to my pads and I can play them. The sample, you can see the sampler is triggering the sample when I do it, and it brings that sample forward. It also selects it, so that's kind of nice when you're working with this stuff. So that's the easy way to get pads. That might be enough for most of you, but like I said, we're going in deep today, so I'm going to show you some other ways. Because, for example, you may want to, let me go, so this left area here has different views for sort of your different tasks, whether it's playing the pads, editing the samples and editing the sounds on each pad, for composing your patterns and your songs, and then mixing your sounds. So here I can add another bank, and I'll do that for illustrations purposes. And what I'm going to do is close out this info panel on that top left X. And what I want to do is set this up to listen to MIDI. So I need to go back to that and unlearn all of these things. So that's really simple. I can just undo those with those X's and clear those out. And go back to my pads and click this top right buttons. I'm going to go ahead and bring this into camera view so you can see it properly. How's that look? We there? Almost. Bring it down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so there's this little 3-dot menu, and that brings up the sort of things that that relate to a bank, rather than, so that you have your session, which is the whole song, you have your banks, which are the individual sort of instruments or tracks, and then you have your pads, which are your individual sounds. And so here we're dealing with the bank. Go to MIDI setup here, and now we can select the Morph as an input. We're using the, let's see, I want to use single channel mode. Multi-channel mode, it listens to the, what it does is here it'll listen to like any, listen to the channel associated with the pads. So if you have this on channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 16, that's one way of triggering pads, is using the MIDI channel. I am going to just use single channel and change it to channel 2. And now we can dedicate this instrument to this particular rack. Now the issue here is because we're starting at 36 and we use our sort of scene or octave, it's not really an octave because it's 16 notes, shift, you can see that as I change this, it's triggering different notes on this grid here. So I'm looking at the 64 grid view, which is great for something like a launch pad. So we shift down and get down to the lowest note, which is note 4. So that's nice because we, actually get into our visible sounds that we can use, but everything's offset. So there's two things you can do. One is go into the Sensel app. Go into the Sensel app. Slowly but surely it comes up. I am computing a lot of things here with all of these video and audio and streaming stuff that I got going on here. So in the Sensel app, you can actually remap these so that they would be, so that they would line up better. So the way you would do that is select your MIDI production overlay. In this case, it's the Beatmaker one that I have. And then you could go ahead and command select all of these, or just select them individually and go back 4 notes. So instead of C1 as being your bass note, you would be at G#0. And then that way everything's going to line up nicely. So you just drop them all 4 notes. That's one way of doing it. The other way is to just do your rearrangements rather than having to go into the editor and use a computer. You can just sort of move stuff around here on the app itself. So let me go ahead and show you how that works. So I'm sorry that it's not so simple, but I'm at least showing you all of the options. So we can go to select mode here. So when I hit select, we can't actually play any of the sounds. What we're doing is we select a particular pad, and then we can move it around. So we can do, there's a number of different ways of doing this. You can just sort of select this one and cut the pad and move it up 4 and paste it. Then similarly, cut the pad and paste, and so on. And then that will put things in alignment. We have to go out of select mode to hear stuff. So that should correspond with, let's see. Wow. Total fail. All right. What have we going on here? Let me check my MIDI setup again. Port is not connected. I lost my Bluetooth connection there. Too much interference, perhaps? Who knows? Normally this thing is rock solid. So let's go to settings and go to my audio and MIDI devices and connect. And try that again. All right, so I will go down. All right, so now these line up with those top two. I'm not going to do every single one right now because that would be boring. All right, so we can see those as we page up on here on the bottom right. You can go up to, I guess, 4 different banks, 4 different pages. Oh no, 16 pages. So yeah, you can have a lot of sounds, just like it's similar if you work with Ableton Live and their drum racks. It's really quite similar to that. So that is getting MIDI into the pads and being able to play things. Now the next thing you might want to do is use some of these knobs. Really the best way to do that is to think about all of the macros. So we have different macros here, and the way you get those doing stuff is you have to go in and edit a particular pad. So I'll close that out and go to the sample editor. And I'll go ahead and might as well bring this into view again so you can see me use it. And let's see, so when I go into a pad, I can select something like the, let's call it the saturate. So that just adds a distortion to that kick. I can apply that to a macro by double tapping on it and go to macro controls and set that to macro 1. Now to have the MIDI controller actually do something for that, we have to go back to our MIDI focus actions, and again we'll see this here, macro control. How very odd. Putting the iPad on top of the Morph apparently breaks the connection. Oh no, there we go, it's still there. Let's see, where did my, here we go. So macro control 1 is now with the Morph. We'll just stick with that for now. And now when we move this, we should see the macro move. There we go. All right, so how very odd. So that's worth discovering why we lost our control there. Again, I'll go to the 64 view. I probably by putting the iPad on top of this, I'm triggering pressure on the Morph and changing the octave. So let's octave down again. And the cool thing is when I move this, so I'm going to go ahead and go to select and go ahead and cut that pad and just put it up here, paste pad. Then I will select the kick, cut pad, put it on note 4, paste it, and we should, yes, I have to take it out of select. That's interesting. We are discovering things as we move. All right. We seem to be having some Bluetooth issues here. That's all very curious. Things worked wonderful yesterday. Of course, until my live stream didn't work. Well, that's a good look, isn't it? All right. And I will no doubt need to, there we go. So that is getting a macro working with the drum pad, as well as uncovering some mysterious Bluetooth issues. All right, so we've covered the basics of getting MIDI control in. We can also go back to our MIDI focus actions, binding the keys, the pads to different sounds. And in review, the trigger pad is most likely the easiest way to do that. And then what it does is it just, whatever is the frontmost or the active bank, it will go ahead and trigger those sounds. That is probably the most straightforward and easy way to do it. The macro controls, we have already demonstrated that. And then, of course, there's transport controls. This is a modification I made. So when this comes shipped to you, these top buttons are actually mapped to MIDI machine controls, which is sort of like the traditional way to do transport. And so that works with most DAWs. But the Beatmaker application does not listen to those. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just map those with notes. So I modified those in the Sensel app to be notes, and we can take a look at that. I might as well just go deep and show you how easy that is. And because that's why we're here. We're here to learn stuff. We're here to be complete. We have time. And I'm going to option click on the green button. And we can, I'm going to shrink this up a little bit to fit into our window here. And I can select the Morph MIDI, the MP MIDI. Let's see, do I have a standard one? Yes, here we go. So these are normally play, stop, record, strobe, and reset. So in what I did to modify them is I just select it, and actually I use Command, or on Windows you would use Control to select those, and change them all to a MIDI note. And in this case, because I'm just using them as buttons, I don't want pitch bend, I don't want aftertouch. I do want the LED on because LEDs are cool, and the channel doesn't really matter because we're using the MIDI learn system. And in the case of this, because we're probably going to want to reserve the lower notes for other things, I'm going to use the higher notes. So I will use the note values E8 through G8, and so on. So just change it to E, F, Command click to deselect it, and F sharp. It's also strange to think of controlling things with piano notes, but that's what we do because MIDI is kind of wonderful. And so then I would send map to Morph. Obviously I don't have it connected here. So that's how that works. So when I did that, I can now just go to transport play and learn, transport continue, I don't care, transport stop, transport record, and transport loop is there. Okay, great. So now those will start, stop, etc. in the sequence. So if I wanted to record something, it's going to count in. All right, and then I can stop it here and then click stop twice to go all the way to the beginning, play. Cool. We've kind of set up a situation now where we can use the Morph what it's best at and use the iPad for what it's best at. No more 20 pixel buttons. So we can use an actual tactile button and feel good about it. All right, so MIDI control, we've kind of gone over all of that. And it scales well, so everything I did, you just do multiple times to set up your controller with Beatmaker. And this is, of course, applicable to whatever controller you're using. So my Bluetooth seems to be continually causing me issues here. And much like my Wi-Fi was causing me problems yesterday. All right, here we go. So that is the basics of using MIDI. Now let's get into sort of the germs of composing and sample editing and working with actually, making stuff in Beatmaker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my session that I've been working with. So here it is, Metaldelic. I'll tap on that and press load session. And okay, I want that. And just to keep things active, go ahead and put things here. Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to just go ahead and play the project. And now what we can do is we can hear the project, and then I can sort of deconstruct the process I used. It's, like I said, it's kind of non-traditional from what you would normally use Beatmaker for. So let's go ahead and listen to it. Hopefully we get sound. All right, cool. So there we have it. We have a kind of like death metal, stoner metal track. Why would we do that in Beatmaker? Why not? Really, it comes down to, when you're making demos, you need to feel some sort of inspiration. I think the lyrics speak for themselves. And in this case, I was just listening to the local cool college radio station, KFJC 89.7. And they were playing this local Oakland band that was kind of had that sound. And I was like, oh, that's a great sound. I kind of want to play with that stuff. And so that was the mood. And so that's what you get. The cool thing is that, again, you would sort of like, that's normally something you make with a band. Well, we can't do bands right now. But that doesn't mean I don't want to work with those sounds. The other thing is that we can also sort of like, by loading all this stuff up as sample content, we can sort of take that sound, that sort of deep metal, down slow tempo, this is 60 BPM, and then really start to play around with some of these sounds and take it to a new direction, because we have it in a format that is more electronic. And so we're going to be applying sort of like, again, we're applying like these hip hop production methods, but applying it to something that doesn't really like fit that paradigm. And so yeah, that's what we're working with. So I want to go over how I sort of like started this track. So I didn't, just play the riffs and everything. I created sort of these elements of the riff. So if since I messed up all my MIDI learn stuff, I need to make sure that is working. So I'm going to go to MIDI Focus Actions and do this the easy way. So trigger pad is going to be this guy, that guy, that guy, and so on. So now you get to see this process fleshed out. I'm on 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I might as well go through, even though I'm not really using all of these paths. And, oops, that's the wrong one. Trigger pad 14. Can I count? Yes, I can. There we go. Wonderful. Let's see. I want to check in. And looks like we've got some questions, but they're being answered. So sweet. All right. People are talking, people are asking, people are answering. It's all good. I'm going to focus on my work. So instead of having those riffs, I kind of broke it up into these granular pieces. And that's the guitar, and then all right, so then I can combine them. Oops, that's the wrong. All right, so now we are fully metalized. And so what did I do? So like I said, I didn't just play those riffs, I kind of made each element. So let me kind of show you how that works. Let me switch over to the demonstration that I recorded earlier. So what I want to discuss in this is just how to record stuff into GarageBand. And I had to do it earlier because of connection stuff. So I'll demonstrate how we actually get sound from the guitar into the iPad, which is probably really basic for most of you, but damn it, this is for archival purposes, and I want everyone to feel like they're getting something out of this. So here we go. Let's take a look. Recording into GarageBand is pretty simple. On the iPad, and it looks like the movie is freezing, perhaps. You can touch everything. There's no really other distractions. It's just the app. But because we're doing a full tutorial about using the iPad as a studio, I figured I should go through this bit. Especially since we've got people coming at this stream from people using guitars, people using samplers, people using synthesizers. So it's kind of all over the place. I want to cover everything. All right. Well, so in this case, looks like we have movie for this project, here. I used guitar a lot. And all those great plans. Recorded into GarageBand because what I wanted to do is dashed. Let's try that again. Recording into GarageBand is pretty simple. On the iPad, it makes it really easy because you can touch everything. Wow. There's no really other distractions. It's just... All right. Well, here I am. Let's go. I'm going to try and play that a different way. You know, sometimes you try to make things easy, and you get dogged. All right, so I am going to go ahead and find that movie. And that would be here in OBS. And all right, let's see if this plays it. Recording into GarageBand is pretty simple. On the iPad, it makes it really easy because you can touch everything. And there's no really other distractions. It's just the app. But because we're doing a full tutorial about using the iPad as a studio, I figured I should go through this bit. Especially since we've got people coming at this stream from people using guitars, people using samplers, people using synthesizers. So it's kind of all over the place. I want to cover everything. So in this case, for this project, I used guitar a lot. And I did record into GarageBand because what I wanted to do is I wanted to use the effects for the guitar and just keep things portable. Even though I've got this cool amp over here, I've got guitar pedals and stuff. For the sake of demonstration, I kind of want to keep it all confined to the tablet. So the guitar, just has a 1/4 inch out, and getting that into any sort of digital medium, requires you have some sort of interface that you can do that with. For like this amp, I can just do line out and then run that into an interface. For the iPad and iOS, you're going to need some sort of class compliant interface. This is the simplest solution for guitar. This is the, you just kind of plug your input in here, and it already matches, it has the correct impedance, so it's not just a line level like a keyboard. It's got a little volume control here to set your levels. And then on the other end, it's got a lightning connector, so you can plug that in to the iPad. The nice thing about this is it's kind of modular, so it has this funky like S-video thing, which is kind of a drag because it's fairly specific, and if you lose it, you're slightly hosed. But it makes it modular, so you can plug in one that works with just standard USB for a regular computer. And there's even ones for like using really old iPads and stuff for 30-pin. So that's the simplest way to get audio from the guitar. I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the iPad and give a quick demo of recording, how I recorded the guitar that I wanted to sample. All right, so put it on the iPad. I will plug this in to the lightning port, and we should be getting some signal. Audio device connected. Hey, I love it when things work. So you can use just like a standard class compliant interface. If you do, I did mean to show this before, you'll need to use something like this, the camera connection kit, and we'll go over that when it comes to the MIDI control too. But this has the lightning controller on one end, and then you can just plug any USB device in here, whether it's a camera, as the name implies. Some of these don't. This one in particular has the power pass-through, which is super nice. But there are ones that just have the USB. Then you're running on battery power. But that way you can connect any sort of class-compliant device, like the Focusrite devices. Tascam makes several different kinds, even ones that have tons of audio inputs. So you can really like run a multi-track studio through your iPad. So I do want to turn on monitoring so I can hear the guitar. And I will show you how I added an amplifier and pedal effects. So let's see, I'm going to kind of mute these other ones that I have going on here and add something. So there's a bunch of, in GarageBand you can add instruments that are software instruments. This is designed for working with like a microphone for vocals, and it has the appropriate effects. The amplifier is of course geared towards guitar. I'm going for a distorted sound. So once you do that, you've got a bunch of different amp models. Let's see, we should be able to hear our guitar. You can see here on the iRig, it's got a nice little level meter. If I have it too loud, it would be, I can go ahead and show that. If I have it too loud, it would be red. We don't want red, we want it in the green. Okay, that's cool. So let's see, I want to make sure that even though it said I have one monitoring on, the monitoring is not on. So now we hear the guitar, we see the levels up here. Great. And then we can just go ahead and flip through these as if they were photographs. And that's kind of got a nice metal sound to it. Okay, so that's the amplifier. But of course, any proper guitar rig has pedals. So go up here to the right, and we can add pedals, and they have the same, really the same selections that we have in Logic and GarageBand on the Mac. So if you're working with those, you can really get a nice sort of consistency with the sound. Go ahead and tap, and whatever. There's some, I don't want to get too choosy here for the sake of demonstration. I always do like an auto filter. All right, then we can also, of course, tune our instrument. There's a nice tuning fork. As you can see, I'm slightly out of tune here. Let's tighten up that E string. And because we're playing some metal power chords, we're really only using 3 strings. All right, so the important ones are in tune. Yes, I am being quick about this. All right, so we choose our track view again up here. And we're plugged in. We're ready to go. So then you just hit record. And all right, so record some stuff, and we'll see the track. So I didn't go all the way to 0. It's always good to start at 0 when you want to start at the beginning. Fortunately, it's easy to drag. Okay, so that's just the basics of recording into GarageBand. It's really the same whether you're using instruments, guitars, vocals, or things like that. Okay, that was a lovely presentation. All right, let me go ahead and get that out of here. And so now that we demonstrated that, so now we've gotten our sound into GarageBand. The thing we want to do now is go ahead and export that to Beatmaker. So this is kind of an important thing. You know, sampling is all about source material, and if you're not using the built-in packs and you want to create your own samples, you got to figure out ways of getting that stuff into Beatmaker. So you know, and GarageBand is great for, you know, if you're doing field recording, if you're doing, you know, like a band recording, or, you know, in the case of using guitar, it's just really a nice interface for, you know, getting sound onto the iPad and interfacing with you know, being able to edit stuff and things like that. So you can, of course, anyway, losing my train of thought here. Yeah, so anyway, so we can take a look at what I did previously. So I went ahead and I recorded guitars. So what I did is, like I said, instead of doing the riff and sampling the elements of that riff, I wanted to build the riff up with the individual pads on the Morph. So I just did the individual and just recorded a few variations of each power chord, and that way I could layer stuff, and that was sort of like another example, another way to show off some of the power of Beatmaker. So I did the same thing for bass track, so, you know, I can play that. There's all my doubled bass. And then I even did the same for drums, because I'm cheap and didn't want to buy an acoustic drum pack. Okay, no, really I wanted to demonstrate this stuff. So what I did is I just recorded the drum hits from one of the nice drum kits in GarageBand. And, you know, I didn't worry about playing them. I just wanted to get the various hits. And then I could take that audio into Beatmaker and sample it and make my own kit. So the best way to, once you record stuff in GarageBand, the way to get it over, that was one of the challenges, because it's not as straightforward as it is on like a standard computer. So this is kind of a good pedagogical, educational exercise. So what we need to do is go to the My Songs section of GarageBand, and from here is where we can export just a stereo file. So you'll notice that, let me go back to my example here. You notice that I only have one track active, so I can mute everything else and just keep active the one I'm going to export. So this is my stems. Go back to My Songs, select in the top right, and then I'm going to select the acoustic drums. And how about I bring in the overhead too, and we can take a look at that. Take a look at the iPad on here, just for the sake of example. And hey, I can even tilt it up. Avoid a little of that glare, maybe. Maybe not. Okay, so I've selected the acoustic drums, and then down here at the bottom left, share. Share is where you export to your files. So in this case, you can, you know, obviously share it with your computer or whatever. And I just want the stems. So share a song, and it's going to render the stereo file. You have a bunch of options. Because I'm sampling, because I want to work with the highest quality, I'm going to do it as an uncompressed wave, and then I'm going to share it. And now I'll have the opportunity of choosing where I want to put that file. Go to Open In, and so this is kind of unusual because there's an opportunity in the Open In section to open in Beatmaker, but I found that doesn't really work, and it kind of makes sense because, you know, Beatmaker isn't really designed to open files. It's designed to load them from within it. So what you do is, instead of open in Beatmaker, which doesn't really do anything, you save to files, and then you can save it to a location on your iPad or iCloud or whatever if you're collaborating with somebody. And in this case, I saved it. You can really save it anywhere, but it makes sense to put it in the imports directory, or you could put it in samples. Beatmaker is going to do what it wants with it anyway. So you would save it to imports and you add it. I'm not going to do that right now because I've got plenty of that stuff. So that's it. And then when you go to, let's exit GarageBand, go to Beatmaker. I'm going to go ahead and go to an empty set here, create an empty pad so we can sort of run through the example of how I created this stuff. So you can select a pad where you want it. I want to start loading samples on this one, for example. And I'll go to my samples up on the top left here, and then go ahead and find my guitar samples that I've made. I'm going to use something a little bit different than what I just showed you. It's a, oops, I lost my, all right, hide that. And now I can drag this perhaps onto a pad. Yeah, look at that. And now I want to go to the sample editing. And now we can really start to get into the meat of the sampler. So this is where I become a walking advertisement for Beatmaker instead of an actual stream for the Morph. So consider this charity. All right, so we're going to get into the sampler here. We've got this very simple, just a few notes from the guitar. And obviously, so we loaded that one thing. If it's a drum hit, it could be that simple. For example, let's go ahead and load a drum hit. From here, we can click on this to press the browse, and we'll just find like a kick sample, and we'll drag that over here and close out here in the top left. Okay, great. Super cool. And let's see. My Bluetooth trauma is continuing, and it's amazing how demos work. Ah, yes, okay. So I had, there we go. So now I'm using the Morph to trigger this because I will want to do that when I'm in edit view. All right, so I'm going to go back to my guitar. So there's a few things you can do here. So we can, let's say we just wanted these last 3 notes, and that's all we cared about. We can move our in and out points and select that and go to edit. So there is an edit button here someplace. Oh wait, I need to, there it is, edit. And that brings up this edit window, and I just want to trim it. There's a few things you can do here. All I'm really interested in is trimming that so I can focus on these 3 notes. Okay, I'm going to close that out. And so there's a few things we can do here. One of the things we can do is set up looping. So let's say you wanted to play it like a synthesizer on a, on a keypad. You can choose one and select the looping. In this case, I'll go ahead and do loop forward. And it's just looping that part. Of course, we can zoom in a little bit here and adjust our loop end. This is where touchscreens get a little bit nasty here. Okay. And I can use these nice arrows down here to sort of manipulate my start and end points. And let's see, so, oops. And sadly, I can't adjust these in real time. But then, so when you're looping, you hear all that clicking. That's a cool sound, maybe not the thing you're looking for. You'll want to turn disk streaming on so you can really kind of manipulate that. Disk streaming off, it's going to save some CPU and memory. Disk streaming on gives you more options, so that's just how it is. You can then add a crossfade to smooth out some of those. So let's see, crossfade is giving me NA. This I've never had happen. Welcome to demos. All right, so let's just go ahead and take a look at live stretching, which is kind of cool because this allows us to change the pitch independent of the duration. So when I go ahead and change the tune, I'm always going to get that sort of same loop cadence with the stretching there. I'm going to reset that value with the pop-up window. And perhaps my crossfade is not, I don't know, but the crossfade, you can sort of smooth out these ends of the loop. That's the whole point of that. I am going to disable live stretching. And so now that we've experienced looping, we can go ahead and check out the slicing. So this is a super powerful feature that can save you a ton of time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn looping off. No loop. Stretch out to the entire sample. And move my... Okay, so maybe we want to slice these to different pads so we can play each individual one. So go to slice mode, and we can auto slice, and you can do detect. Detect can work really nicely for these really simple things. And you can see it found 4 slices, 3 slices. Don't care about that 4th one. And we could probably go ahead and ignore that. So the slice mode, auto slice, you can also do a split where you can just divide it into 3 equal segments. And that's probably the best for this because then I can just go ahead and fix them up when I want to. And then you can also do it on a grid. So if you have like a beat that you bring in, a sampled beat that's on a tempo, then you can slice it up to a grid and really do some cool stuff that way with the pads. And that is like kind of like your key hip hop stuff right there. But I'm going to go ahead and go with the split and do it in 3 slices. And divide by 2. Okay, cool. And then when you want to, here's how you can slice it to pads. You can slice it to layers for velocity. So we can sort of experiment with those. If we slice to pads, we can select which start pad. I'll go ahead and start it at 8. And I will apply that. And so now we have, and now we can refine these a little bit. So that is, so that's breaking it up into 3 individual pads. We can also do it in a different way. So we can go back to our original and save as layers to multiple layers, or to a single layer. Let's try that one. So a single layer, what this is going to do is sort of make it spread it out over the keyboard down here. So I could probably switch to, oh, that's not going to work. Okay. Let's see, start key, apply. So now this is all on this pad, but when we go to our pad and go to keys mode, and that's the same as if you had a piano roll. And right? So I hope that makes sense. And we can see that making more sense in the mapping section where we apply a particular sample to a particular key on the piano keyboard. So in my track, I did some things pretty differently with that. But then you can also do, finally, I'm going to go through this other slice mode. Let's go ahead and undo some of these things. Oh, undo is so wonderful. All right, you can see it's slightly buggy there because it disappeared. I'm going to go to slice mode again. Oh, turn on slice mode. Auto slice. Save to multiple layers. And this is where you can do things with velocity, which is really where the morph starts to shine. And I can apply that. And we can go to our mapping again. And we can see over here, on the bottom left, we have our sample layers. So it's as if like we have 3 samples stacked on top of each other. And it just plays the active layer in that case, or actually the first layer. So what do we do with those layers? We can go to the mapping. Let's go ahead and make those velocity sensitive. All right, touch screen, slightly fussy. And then this is kind of an example of what I did with the power chords in my track. Because I wanted more variation, I didn't care about the dynamics, where a lot of times you will have a, like for example, a soft hi-hat, and then a really hard hi-hat, and then different samples in between. And that way it sort of emulates what a hi-hat would be played on acoustically. I wasn't worried about that so much as I wanted variety just based on velocity. So we can hear what that sounds like here. Oh man, this touch screen is really fussy with my overwashed hands. So let's see, we want to make sure they all have the same root key. And so when we play here, we only get one variation. But so that's the other thing, is we want to see our modulations turn velocity off for gating the volume. And we can also we can visualize that maybe easier than so now we have different notes at different velocities, which is kind of interesting. So that is the basic premise that I use to sort of create these instruments. So again, that gives me more variety and kind of makes it sound more real rather than just like a product of sampling. Now we can go to, let's take a look at one of these and go to the sampler. And there we go. So what else did I want to cover here? Yes, so there's also the opportunity to add layer effects per pad. And you can also do effects for the entire bank. And that can be done in the down here in the bottom left, the audio effects. So you can see with this guitar sound I have lots of effects. So I kind of EQ'd it a little bit, added some reverb, added some delay. It's really simple to add effects. So you have to click on the audio effects down here, and you just add audio effects, and then you have a selection of different things that you can use to process your sound. And then that is going to apply to everything in the pad itself. So when we go to C, this has a different set of effects than D does, and we seem to have lost all audio here. Oh, there we go. Ah, right, because I have two drum kits on here. All right, and the ultimate, so in this one I don't have any effects. We can take a listen to some of the things that we can do. So we can really dirty things up with a bit crusher, turn them off. We can, overdrive. Reverb is always, of course, a nice one. The reverb's okay. I'm not a huge fan of the reverb here in Bitwig, but the nice thing is you can, or Bitwig, in Beatmaker, you can actually add layer effects that can tune into VSTs, but unfortunately it does not look like you can add VSTs. Oh yes, here we go. So you have audio effects. I don't have any effects except ENSO, which is a looper, so that doesn't really help us. That's going to be the next lesson, is the cool guitar solo stuff. At least I think it's cool. So we had this section here in our composition. So the guitar solo, this is where we can really start getting creative with sampling and get creative in Beatmaker, because I'm sort of applying sampling and applying the sort of strength of Beatmaker, which allows us to add plugins. So again, that's sort of done through this sampler interface, selecting the wave. Let's go back to our selection here. This would be here on E. So that doesn't really sound like a cool shredded guitar. And this is, but it kind of depends on how you play it. So we can go to see what we did for the plugin. So the plugin section is where you can load in VST instruments. In this case, I'm using Quanta, which is granular. So so that's kind of cool. It sounds like a total thrash metal solo, and my hands, as you can see, is slightly damaged here. Not so good at doing that. What does that sound? What did the original source sound like? We can take a listen to that from Garageband. So here's the original source. So because I knew that I was bringing it into this granular plugin, really all I wanted was the sort of tonality of the sort of like high, of the notes from a guitar solo notes, the tweedledee, and I wanted the distortion, and I wanted some of that hard attack in there. So I was really just looking for quality of sound rather than the quality of my chops, which is not so great. So we heard like those different sections. The cool thing about Quanta is then I can sort of like automate some of these things and apply them to the Morph. So this is, we can listen to this. We could listen to this. Well, we used to be able to listen to it. There we go. Demo mode is in full effect. We have lost our audio. Let's see. Well, maybe this is a good opportunity to learn something. Yeah, Yes, we definitely have lost audio there. Let's look at our mixer. That looks okay. There's no mutes. Let's try something else that we know makes sound. There's probably someone out there. It's that button right there. No, this thing is just hosed. See, we're not even getting any interaction. All right. So what we're going to do is swipe up and quit that. See if we can reboot this. I'm glad you are all so patient. All right. Glad somebody's moderating out there. Sweet. Now I'm going to open up my session again. And hopefully it works. All right, cool. So let's go back to how we sort of get this guitar sound in Quanta. So again, we don't have any samples loaded. We're kind of ignoring all of this stuff, and we're going straight to the plugin, doing all of our work in the plugin. So in Quanta, I can just load a sample. It's pretty simple. It's these little, if you want to load one, you just go ahead and press the little floppy disk, and then you can load a sample in. And then there's some different little modulators. And I need to make sure that my Morph is plugged in and working correctly. MIDI setup, port. No, of course not. I'm having Bluetooth issues. There we go. Dum, dum, dum. Of course, it's about 90 degrees in here, so it's not so surprising. All right, here we go. Back to Quanta. And my MIDI setup. It's Morph. All right, now we got some noise. All right, so I kind of have this thing going, and I also noticed that things are not quite the way they're supposed to be. So if we take a look at the Morph, of course, as I touch it and bring it into view, I'm going to go ahead and put that front and center. So we can kind of use some of the gestures that are available to us on the Morph and bring those into Quanta, which is sort of nicely set up to listen to those. So we have our matrix, and we can sort of apply how much of this pitch bend I want to go to different parameters in this patch. And oscillator tune, I definitely want that to go to note. Over here on the, we see this bend column right here, which is what's interesting to us. What do we have that applied to? So the bend, I definitely want a number of grains. Grain position. Grain tune, I don't want, because I don't want it to change the pitch. So we can take a look at our sample and see what's happening. So we can really break it up. And then we can also see the aftertouch is sort of broadening where I can, where it's scanning for the little bits of sound in this. So as I press harder, you can hear it sort of broadening and like becoming like this bigger sound. So I'm just scanning through that sound and creating sort of like this guitar solo effect that I could never do as a human being. And so we can go ahead and listen to our production here. And now it's going to sound different than it did before because I took that pitch bend off. So there we go. We got kind of like this cool thrash solo that is done in this very digital fashion just by... so it's exceptionally different instrument to play, and I, for one, very much enjoy it. And again, like, it kind of gives us, like, this is where the Morph shines in this type of production, because, you know, given the screen, all we can do is that kind of stuff, which is respectable in a way, but it's not the sound I was going for. I just needed that little bit of organic touch that I can get from the Morph. Get that out of the way. All right, cool. So that is sort of the extent of the production. Then, of course, like with the vocals, again, like, I didn't just track the vocals to the song. I didn't, you know, I'm not set up for that. Like, I just have this iPad, and then I didn't even use a fancy mic. I just used the iPad's mic. So let's go ahead and take a look at our composition here. Let's see, I'm going to go to song, and we can take a look at our vocals. And the vocals are just triggering the individual pieces. And I just recorded this directly into the directly into the sampler here by using the record feature. So you can set it up. You can even play what you have already set up in your composition, and then record against that, and then just drop that sample in, and then chop it up like I showed you before. And again, I just used the slice. So protect the human race, invisible horror, destructive fury, and so now I can drive you completely insane. All right, so, you know, that's the vocals. And again, like, I didn't really want to try to track them accurately. I didn't want to go through all that. I just recorded them in here and used sampling and slices to be able to time it. So I was able to just sort of zoom in on the attacks of each particular phrase. And then, of course, I did add some effects because recording through the iPad microphone is pretty crummy. So the effects that I added in this case was just a compressor. So as you can see, I have like a really high compression ratio, and the overdrive to give it a little bit more meat. Destructive fury. And if you want to hear it without it, I'm sure you do. Destructive fury. So you can see it just definitely just has a lot more presence, and, you know, it's a lot more metal with that. So yeah, and I didn't do any pitch bending. That was just me damaging my throat. And let's see. So that is really sort of the crux of this whole project, was to come in and try to create this sort of rock track in isolation, using, you know, the stuff that is kind of like common, like a guitar, and, you know, as a pedagogical exercise, I really wanted to just sort of break all these things out. So let's see if there are any other questions that only I can answer. If anybody has some questions, that would be awesome, because then it would make everything worthwhile. Sweet. But yes, I see that there is someone asking. I'm going to put this on the video. Someone's asking about an iOS version of the Sensel app, because that is kind of like a weakness in this link. Like, as you can see, that we did need to actually use the Sensel app to apply some changes. Here, how about I just go to this spot and I'll sit down and talk to you. So yeah, we did need to use the Sensel app to apply some changes, and that required using a Mac or a Windows machine. It's something that we're working on to bring that app to iOS. I can't give you a date or anything, of course, but yeah, that's definitely a goal of ours, so we can really make the iPad and the Morph just like this beautiful sort of combination. You know, you can see that these two things are really literally make beautiful music together. Oh my God! Actually, when you put them together, they make music. Yeah, that's, you know, they're the same size. Like, as far as something that you want to take on a trip, it doesn't take much. And you know, with the super powerful apps of Garageband and Beatmaker, you can really kind of bust out anything, whether you're doing beats or speed metal or death metal or stoner rock. There's a lot of opportunities for experimentation and producing some super cool tracks. So I hope that sort of gives people a good insight of, you know, the sampling workflow, how you can use it no matter what your sound, how you can get sounds in and out, and how you integrate the Morph into it. I kind of ran into some issues with the Bluetooth there, but you can also see that I'm having other issues here with this jerky frame rate, and my God, I'm glad that any of this works at all. So I think that's sort of the risk of doing things live. So we're all a little bit vulnerable now, and we're putting ourselves in situations that we are not accustomed to. So let's use the situation to learn some stuff, express ourselves, and get some good work done. So I hope this was useful to you, and I look forward to bringing you some of our next live streams. We have some great stuff next week. We're going to be bringing in some artists. We're going to be talking to Moldover, who is just an amazing polymath, technologist, musician, solo artist, touring teacher. He's been doing it for a long time, and I think he has some really great insights into not only, like, I've always admired what he's been doing musically and in terms of his like career as a creative individual. He's been doing sort of different things for a long time, and they're really kind of like, you know, really blown out into relief now, being that we're all sort of like separated and have to do a lot of stuff on our own. And then I'll also be talking to Noisebusters, also known as Ralph Freund. And he is a musician in, well, he kind of tours around Europe. Right now he's based in Switzerland. And so we're going to be doing a long distance chat. And he's going to take us deep into some stuff that he did for us for Bitwig. And we're also going to be releasing a really cool interactive pack for Bitwig. And yeah, we're going to learn some cool stuff and get inspired by some really great artists. So we're going to keep doing these live streams. I hope you are enjoying them, and have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care.